Maybe. Kind of. Depends on how you interpret it. What's up, guys? I Love Hunter here, and here we are to do a quick little discussion on whether or not a slightly more, let's just say, not caring if Megami survives Gojo changes anything in the battle against Sukuna. We have over 13 chapters to cover, so let's not waste any more time and let's get ready to hop right into it. Editing me, are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go. What's up, guys? That guy with a "You cannot hide from me, you foolish little device. You are part of me" pencil here. Fun fact, I do happen to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. And another fun fact, Satoru Gojo's in a pretty weird spot. Naturally, ironically enough, not Satoru Gojo, but the entire cast was kind of in a really weird spot when it came to dealing with Sukuna. Because unfortunately, Sukuna was not his own person. He was a person holding a person by being inside a person. That sounds crazy, but you know exactly what I'm talking about if you're a JJK fan. So it really comes down to a question of, okay, clearly they were trying to save Megami. And by proxy, that has to mean to some degree they're holding back more lethal methods. I'll talk separately about when other characters may have been able to take the King of Curses heads, because I do think there are interesting discussions later on where characters could have maybe done it if they didn't care about Megami, but Gojo's an extra weird case, mainly because of what he opens up with. Now, it is implied that the proximity of Hollow Purple weakens it. Its efficacy drops after a time period. How much it drops? No idea. But it does seem to drop at some point. That's what Sukuna mentions later on in this very battle, that ultimately maybe if the Hollow Purple is fired from 3 kilometers away, 2 kilometers away, 1 kilometer away, then maybe it would have actually just absolutely vaporized and atomized the King of Curses. Who knows? But with that being the case, it's clear to some metric and some mentality, Gojo likely knew this wasn't going to execute him. At least somewhat, because he does fire it with absolutely no regard, and he specifically makes it as powerful as possible. The whole point of 223 is the idea that by having no steps skipped, by having everybody there, from the music to Utahime to Gojo doing the full chants and the full hand motions, everything, instead of going with the optimization of sorcery by stripping everything down, you double down and go as deeply as possible into sorcery by making sure you take out every step. It's clear that Satoru Gojo was aiming for something, but it doesn't seem like it was execution. So could he have executed Satoru? Well, no. Could he have executed Meguna here? Maybe, if you think he could have gotten closer. But considering the fact that Sukuna does react to his presence regardless, like he senses it from a pretty decent distance, that 4 kilometers away on the top of the building, Sukuna does notice it. So I'm assuming if Gojo had tried to get any closer, that like would have put Utahime, that would have put Gakuganji, and that would have put Ijichi all in danger. And thusly, he didn't do it. And that's when he was trying to save Megami. So I don't think putting them in danger, even if you were trying to get closer, I don't think it would work. So I don't think that would count. Here comes to a question. Once again, I brought this up in the past. Other people have brought it up. But maybe here he could have just UV'd. Instead of talking to Sukuna, like just having a good old casual chat with him, talking about how you're the challenger here, while his arm was gone, maybe he could have just... And then Sukuna would have been forced to just, I don't know, get Unlimited Void stunned. Maybe. And technically that wouldn't even be executing Megami, but since he doesn't do it in canon anyway, I don't think he would. It kind of like that's the big issue, right? Because in order to make it so that Satoru Gojo's moving with a little bit more murderous intent, like you kind of do sort of have to pull him out of character a little bit. So I guess if we're going full out of character, this is a point where maybe he could have won if he was trying to just execute Meguna, not necessarily caring that Megami was there. This is it. Right? Like right here, because he just Unlimited Voids immediately. He claps in, Unlimited Voids, Sukuna's paralyzed, no Maharaga adaptation ready, no Megami Soul prep ready, none of that, bada bing, bada boom. He wins. And then he just like blows Sukuna's head off. So there's that. This is one point where maybe he could win. Though I've heard contentions for this too. I need to go check back on that old video when I first brought this up, and I need to see the contentions again. But that may be one point where Satoru Gojo could have won if he was moving with absolute crazy intent. He immediately hollow perped, tore the arms off, warped in, Unlimited Voided before any adaptation was done. Bang! That's a point where maybe he could have won if he was moving a bit more maliciously. Then, admittedly, a point where he could have won if he was moving more maliciously doesn't really spawn in for a while. Like, it takes a couple chapters. Like, I'm pretty confident in saying in all of 224, there's nothing Gojo could have done Even if he was moving like Bloodlusted to try and get rid of Sukuna, nothing. The two do no damage to each other for this entire chapter. They do nothing but neutralize, showing their relativity. Then once again in 225, it spends a whole bunch of the chapter talking about their proficiency and the domain clash. And once again, ultimately, Gojo going for domain here is, one, in character. Two, it wouldn't really make sense for him to do anything lethal if he teleported away, unless he wanted to try and fire another long-range Hollow Purple, which Sukuna would definitely be prepared for this time, so he just dodged that. So, still nothing really here in 225 that changes if Gojo's moving maliciously. In 220, that's 227, then you go back to 226. In 226, once again, we're kind of in the same position. Gojo's fighting for his life inside Malevolent Shrine. I don't think any sort of malicious intent flowing through his veins would really change anything, considering he's trying to keep the malicious intent alive in the first place by fighting back against Sukuna, but clearly that's not going to work very well. You could argue here he could, like, I don't know, shove a red in his mouth, but even still, I don't think so. I think he did this because he needed to, because if he didn't, he wouldn't be out the range of Malevolent Shrine, and he needs to essentially take time to recover and heal here. So I don't think he could have done anything too lethal to Sukuna here, even if he was moving with malicious intent. And then in 227, the story's kind of more the same. They go in for another domain clash, and then we see Gojo somewhat moving lethal, but considering he doesn't seem to know, or doesn't seem to want to risk, or doesn't seem to do anything with Unlimited Hollow, I don't think anything changes again. Because once again, the two are showing their neutrality in terms of a domain clash, except now the conditions are inverted, and then we see the relativity continue, and it doesn't seem like Gojo has any time to, like, maybe charge another point blank red, maybe start using Hollow Purple. Like, I don't think that Sukuna would have allowed that here, considering he is domain amping at first. And then when the two do continue to clash, Sukuna reveals the plot twist and shows off that this attack can't stop. Now, maybe Bloodlusted Gojo wouldn't even think about this and would try to, like, slap a red and a blue together, but I don't think so. I don't think the opportunity kind of presents itself here at all. And then his domain shatters again, then obviously he's not going to be able to defeat Sukuna. And then he goes in for another domain expansion, leading into Small Ball. Now, Small Ball is where it could get somewhat contentious, because we know Sukuna for extended periods of Small Ball is not using domain amp. He mentions it later. Even Gojo's like, he's fighting weird. So obviously, maybe if Sukuna was a little more... Well, Sukuna stays the same amount of stupid, and Satoru Gojo gets a little bit more active, then maybe? But then again, the question is Sukuna standing there and letting him do Hollow Purple? If the answer is no, then no. Gojo doesn't change anything if he's Bloodlusted. Nothing happens. Because the domain's going to break regardless, because Sukuna's holding back and not using domain amp the entire time. And if Sukuna is using domain amp the entire time, because he sees Satoru Gojo's tweak it out a little bit more, then none of Gojo's attacks are going to do enough, and Sukuna's not going to let him charge up Hollow Purple, the only thing that could actually be lethal to Sukuna. Everything else will, at best, especially if Sukuna's domain amping, hurt a little bit. It'll burn a little bit. And that's if Sukuna gives him the time to charge, which Gojo probably wouldn't have. So I ultimately don't think anything crazy happens here. Now, there is a hypothetical example where something goes buku bonkers, but it's not in 228. I do believe it's in 229. Because we see the two go into another domain clash, Sukuna's still acting a little bit not the brightest, and proceeding to not really use domain amp, allowing himself to get thrown around a whole bunch, which allows him to get pulled into this wombo combo, which is the immediate red shot to the face. This red shot to the face leads to the domain shatter, and the domain shatter leads to the knockback leads into the double domain clash, the double domain clash leads into the small ball, but a small ball that was slightly faster, meaning Roman Sukuna's domain came out slightly late, meaning the curse technique lag, meaning Sukuna gets knocked. So in chapter 229, there's a possibility that Gojo could have slaughtered him here if he aimed his fist a bit higher. Now, this really depends if, like, he would presumably have the time, because Sukuna's under the effects of Unlimited Void. Unlimited Void did hit. Less than 0.01 seconds. Limited Void does hit. And then, boom, this does happen when Sukuna's domain clashes, and then full domain. Now, admittedly, there's some weird stuff that happens here. I'm assuming that maybe Gojo empowered himself with red or something. I don't know why Sukuna suddenly gets knocked back here. Because remember, Gojo's punches are like receiving a counter punch, aka you're swinging and then your opponent dodges and swings back. But remember what blue does. It attracts things. So Sukuna really shouldn't have been knocked too far away here. So maybe if Gojo didn't have to travel this distance, he may have been able to beat Raga's activation, and then maybe been able to bury his fist like all the way through Sukuna's skull. Maybe. It depends. Because I'm not sure which is actually more durable. Obviously, going for the brain on a sorcerer is just the best thing to do. So maybe if Gojo had, like, aimed his arm higher, dug his fist into Sukuna's brain, and then maybe Sukuna, who wouldn't have the time to speak, wouldn't have the time to say with this treasure I summon or think it, if his brain is extremely damaged, not just from a limited void, but having an actual fist buried through it, then maybe that's enough to say, okay, that's a lethal blow. Because then, I don't know, it's his fist in Megami's brain. Naturally, the fist doesn't actually go that deep into Sukuna's chest, though. Which really becomes a question of, like, Sukuna's durability versus Gojo's attack potency. Do you think Gojo's fist will get far enough into Sukuna's brain to prevent him from summoning Mahoraga? Because not only, this is a case here where Mahoraga didn't spawn autonomously, it actually shows in the chapter. Hold on, editing me, I got your back, broski. Yeah, editing me, dap me up from the future. Okay, it probably won't. I'd actually be scared if he did. But, with it being the case, Sukuna does, I'm not sure if he says it or if he mimes it or something, but with this treasure I summoned, he does mention that. And, notably, the only reason he has the chance to even think that is because for some reason, Satoru Gojo needs to, like, suddenly travel a massive distance to get to Sukuna again. Not necessarily a massive distance, but Sukuna does get knocked back, his domain does collapse. So, maybe here, it's the 50-50 of, do you think Sukuna's brain reinforcement, his head reinforcement, is stronger than his chest reinforcement? Or do you think that because I don't think Gojo goes in that deep here. I think he goes in, like, maybe knuckle deep. Like, and by knuckle deep, I mean, like, maybe, like, these knuckles. Like, if you think this far in is enough to do lethal brain damage to Sukuna, that Mahoraga gets shut off or cannot come out or he can't think it or he can't chant it in time in order for Mahoraga to come out and stop the Unlimited Void. That'd be it. Now, of course, in a scenario where Gojo's bloodlusted, Sukuna's likely acting a bit differently, but even then, it'd be pretty hard to tell. So that's another point where maybe if Gojo was moving a bit more malicious, he could have done something. And also if, like, blue worked traditionally here and Sukuna wasn't strangely knocked away from Gojo's fist. If anything, when Gojo uses blue punches, you should be, like, almost stuck to his fist. Strangely enough. That should be how it works. You shouldn't actually get repelled. If he used red, it would make sense that you get repelled, because you would get hit and then the red would blast you away. But for blue, he should have stayed lodged on Gojo's fist. And if that fist is lodged into Sukuna's brain, and then the blue is, like, attracting him further to the point where, like, not just his knuckles are deep in Sukuna, but, like, his whole hand sort of gets dragged into Sukuna's head, then maybe that's it. That'd be lethal. Because, once again, Sukuna survived a whole bunch, but it's always been to, like, every single organ other than the brain. That's the case. Then, for another time, if you think that time isn't good enough, and I don't blame you, once again, it's very suspect on whether or not Gojo's fist would actually be able to go all the way through Sukuna's skull. We do have Chapter 230. Not this interaction, because clearly the two are both a bit, well, down dirty. I don't think Gojo could have really pulled off anything here that would have been lethal in Megata, unless you think he already had his curse technique back, and then immediately pulls in and just ups a red right in a brain damage Sukuna's face, and then tries to do it, maybe? Or at this point tries to pull out Unlimited Hollow, maybe. But even then, we know Sukuna will survive an Unlimited Hollow from this Gojo because his output's in the trash. He needs to chant later on for the Unlimited Hollow to do things. And then that brain damage still weakens Sukuna without chanting anything is strong enough to take the Unlimited Hollow. And once again, even while Sukuna's brain damage here, I don't think Gojo would have time to do the full chants for purple. But maybe he does. While Sukuna's struggling to recover here, maybe Gojo immediately gets up and starts chanting, but I don't think he has his curse technique back at this point, considering by trying to heal it manually and trying to open a domain, he caused himself brain damage. So it's very likely that he doesn't have the capacity to do anything lethal here, even if he's bloodlusted. And then you go into 231, and we're kind of in the same position, where Gojo would maybe try to do like a limited hollow or a purple, considering he is clearly spamming his curse technique here, but Sukuna does show the ability and capability to react to everything calmly enough, as is. And then also, he does show proclivity to make sure Gojo doesn't do that. He's willing to stop Maharaga's adaptation in case Gojo tries to do anything dangerous, such as we see here, when he starts going in for the mix-ups. Gojo immediately forces Sukuna to activate Domain Amp, and Gojo forces Sukuna to lock in a little bit. So I don't think anything changes here in particular, either. And then the end of the chapter comes along, and we get into chapter 232. This is the only other time where I think Gojo could have just, like, wiped Mega Knight if he was going for the head, because presumably the Black Flash Knuckle Duster straight to the dome probably detonates his head. Probably, just because of how powerful Black Flash should be, but his output's super duper low. And notably, while Sukuna does seem to knock out here for a little bit, or at least go white-eyed, there's been a heavy debate on this. I'll do a video covering that, considering that also seems like an interesting topic to talk about. Like, Shockingly enough, Gojo doesn't actually bury his fist that deep into Sukuna. Like, going to show probably his lowered output, he barely does any damage to Sukuna in terms of, like, tearing his chest open. He's mostly fine. So maybe a headshot wouldn't do anything too crazy here, but that would be the only other solution. Once again, going back to the idea of him burying his fist and then blue amping his fist and then dragging Sukuna's brain around his fist. That's the only other time. Maybe wondering, Pencilman, why not later? Once again, it comes to the fact that a Gojo who chants up for this unlimited hollow, like make sure the red and the blue are at their max chant-based potency against this weakened brain damaged Sukuna, doesn't execute Sukuna. And then by that point, World Slash already exists. And maybe a more bloodlusted Gojo, just instead of yapping here, maybe just goes to slaughter him. Maybe this is the only other time. Like, instead of chatting here and explaining to Sukuna, oh, BT dubs, this, that, and the third, a more bloodlusted Gojo would just, like, blue launch through him. The moment he saw him survive, he would have, like, hit him with a red or hit him with a blue. But maybe Sukuna activates the Binding Vow in time. That would be a 50-50 right here. Whether or not Gojo actually manages to bum rush Sukuna hard enough and blow his head off with, like, a blue punch or a red shot or something before Sukuna Binding Vow World Slashes. And considering the Binding Vow World Slash was all an internal gamble that Sukuna made with himself, with his own curse technique, it may be possible if he sees Gojo doing that, he's sending out the World Slash. And based on how Gojo reacts here and how 235 ends, even if he's bloodlusted, he may launch in a linear path, which could lead to him getting bisected anyway. And that's it. Those are like the only 3 times I see it. It's every single time Gojo gets like a lethal shot to Sukuna's chest if he aimed it at his head and he used blue in a very specific way that we haven't really seen him use it before. So technically, by pure technicalities, here are all the times when Gojo could have pulled out a W. If he went a little bit more devious, a little bit more diabolical. If he was a bit more malicious and didn't care about Megami. But that's what I think. And ultimately, I don't think it's very viable. You have to take Gojo out of character, and you have to start assuming certain things about Sukuna's durability versus Gojo's AP, and how he can use blue, how he can use the Limitless, and whether or not this interaction would end up in a 50-50 in Sukuna's favor or in Gojo's favor. It's really a coin toss. So personally, I don't think there's anything that changes if Gojo comes in bloodlusted, but that's what I think. Please tell me what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you guys think I missed any moments in the Gojo versus Sukuna fight where Gojo could have pulled out a crazy victory royale? Do you agree with me and be like, there are 3 chances, maybe, if that? And even then, he probably still loses. Or do you think that there's something I missed, and that there is a way for the strongest sorcerer of the modern day to overcome the strongest sorcerer in history and properly lay him out, as long as he doesn't care about Mega Fushiguro? Please let me know all that and more in the comment section down below. I'd like to thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure to hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also I do have a Patreon down below where you can support me for as low as $1 things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. So those perks will include the live reaction to the very next chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen, and free very soon all my videos, and if you become a $25 patron or a $25 member, you can order whatever video you want. Also, I do have a link to my Ko-Fi in the description down below, where you can drop 5 beans for a short video, 25 beans for a long video, or any beans at all. Any support is always greatly appreciated. Now, I'd like to thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is that guy with a pencil. Psych! I want to see who makes it all the way to the end. Y'all are getting better at this, though. Sometimes y'all don't. Sometimes y'all fall for the okie doke. Sometimes y'all don't. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, please leave Hollow King. Like y'all know the game Hollow Knight. Instead of Hollow Knight, leave Hollow King, as in what the King of Curses, in the comment section down below. Now, I'd like to thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Dagger the Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members: Zera, Greyhound, Eternal Flame, NMA, Real Rare, Redwolf 4765, Paris Arnold, Astro, and Brandon Payne. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $5 patrons: Zombie Hunter, Sean, Midnight Lord 21, King, Meliodas, Kevin, Encarnacion, Josh Brown, and A+A. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $7 members: Autumn, Mornings, Lazo, and Fine. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $10 members: Robbie Uchiha, Jay Warrior, and AZ Void. And I'd like to give a big ol' thank you to our $10 patrons: Michael Williamson, Joaquin Munoz, and Idem Okami. And I'd like to give a final gargantuan thank you to our $25 patron, Calvin Elder.